Hello from Cork.
Hello from New York.
It's Misha Máire Shanachie Corky. It's Maria, the Cork-based storyteller.
It's me, Jim, here in Fayetteville, New York.
We can't wait to tell you a few stories. Well, how is the weather in New York, Jim?
Well, the weather in New York is what we like to call WinterSpring. So it's barely above freezing and raining.
Yeah.
So it's a good day to be on the story road, not outdoors.
Very true. And the weather is very similar here. So it's not often we have the same kind of weather. We might have a few degrees warmer, but we've had a lot of rain. It's even made our newsrooms that it has rained the whole way through 2026 so far.
And I was just speaking to one of our colleagues in Marrakesh, and it is raining there. It's been raining there so long that they've left for warmer climes. So, I think this is the state of the world right now.
Yeah, I think you're right, So I think we're just going to have to warm one another up with a few stories today. What do you think?
I think let's wrap ourselves warmly in a couple of stories. Yes.
Yeah, great stuff. So I was thinking, that it's still almost the dreaming time of year. So as we're recording now, the St. Bridget's Day has happened, St. Govnit's Day has happened. And in the modern world, that means Imbolc is over, in Bolog, in the stomach. And the gestation period is over. But in the old days, Jim, I think for both of our traditions, it's still the dreaming time. It's still kind of late winter, early spring, as you said. It's that kind of weather. It's also that kind of thinking, isn't it?
It is. It is. Yeah.
So the story that I'm thinking of today is a story like that. It's a Banfassa story, so it's a wise woman's story. So I might tell you that story and see how it opens up the threads of story to what you'll tell us after that.
Please do. Please do.
Once there was a woman and her name was Máire Rua. She had long red hair. She had white skin. She had a man who loved her and she loved him. And to the outside world, it seemed that she had a charmed life. She had a little yellow cottage nestled in the Irish countryside, and she had a little garden that was big enough for her to feed her family and have enough left over to sometimes give a few presents to the neighbours as well. She had hens that gave eggs. She had a goat that gave milk, and life seemed really good. So, to the outside world, it seemed as if she had everything that you could need. But and I know, that life is not like that, and that nobody leaves this world unscathed. She had a little dream, a short little secret that she kept in the bottom of her heart. For you see, she longed for a baby. A little baby to croon to tell stories to sit in the rocking chair up in that room that she'd made for the baby. But that baby, it never came. Despite the fact that she had a little room inside in her cottage where she had put mobiles hanging from the ceiling made by her very own hand, her own mother's rocking chair, and then there was the little cot that she had laid in herself as a little baby, and all the things her talented husband had made for this child, including the changing table. But that baby never came. Máire was a Banfassa, a woman of the knowing, a wise woman, and she had Annam Cara. She had a soul friend, the Máire Rua, the red dog, also known as the fox. Long, long ago, her husband had given up reacting when she'd sit up in the middle of the night when the Kyo Triakta, when the magical mist was forming on the land. And this morning, deep in the night, long before the dawn was to break, she sat bolt upright in the bed, and her husband snuggled in to the little hollow that she left as she hopped out, pulling on her green jacket and her Wellington boots as she ran down the stairs, opened the door and ran out into the foggy night where you couldn't see your hand in front of your face. But sure, she didn't need to see her hand, for the soles of her feet knew every inch of that garden. She came then to the fairy tree, to the whitethorn tree at the edge of her garden, and she knelt down and she looked deep into the eyes of Máire Rua, the red fox. Something happened then that had never happened before. Her spirit rose up out of her body and crossed the space between her and her Anam Cara. Her right hand went into the right paw of the fox, her left hand into the left paw. She lined up her eyes until they became one with the fox. Then the fox stood up, and she felt the movement like a beautiful dance, like every sinew worked, every muscle was so beautiful. She began to walk towards the edge of the river, and then she stuck her long fox tongue into the freezing crystal clear there. And the wild garlic and the salmon who had swum here not 10 minutes before. She was aware that the sheep were nervous, that they could feel her presence. She was aware that the chicks and the hens were on guard, knowing that she was around. But she had no interest in chicks or sheep or even salmon that day. She stood up and she began to pad down the old path into the deep forest. And she made for the centre where the oldest tree was, with a little opening at the end of it. And she thought to herself, I've never seen that before. The forest looks so different through these eyes. And just as the fox made its way to the opening and squeezed itself through, down, down, down she went into the deep, moist, dark, comforting earth. And as she went down, she saw 12 stars moving in the sky. Stars under the ground, she thought. That's not possible. Then she smiled to herself. She was taking a ride in the body of a fox. Anything was possible. Just at that moment, she realised these were not stars that she was seeing, but 6 pairs of bright eyes. Máire Rua had given birth. Máire Rua was a mother, and they licked her nose and up her ears and pushed her over for mother's milk. The earth held her spine as she fed her babies, and she thought to herself, this is what it's like to be a mother. And in that second, a fierce protectiveness came into her. She knew that if anyone stood between her and these fox cubs, that they would have her to deal with. When she had that thought, the fox stood up, shook herself down, and began to make her way back up the little tunnel until she came out at the foot of the tree. The mist had cleared, and all back to her own garden. She saw her own body standing with her hand over the whitethorn tree, as if she was in a deep reverie. And as she saw this, her spirit lit lifted up out of the fox, went across space and back into her own body. Thank you, Máire Rua, she said. Thank you for this great gift. But Máire Rua stood stock still. Máire Rua looked deep into her eyes. I know, she said. I know what I must do. She ran into the house, pulling off her Wellington boots and her green jacket as she ran up the stairs and into that little yellow room. She took the mobiles down from the ceiling first, and into the cot they went. Then the rocking chair that belonged to her mother. Then all the little bits that her husband had made. She took the whole lot and she rolled it down the stairs. The noise woke her husband up. I'm glad you're up, she said. You know that long piece of wood that I was saving? Yes, he said. Well, I know what we have to do with it. I need to make it into a big desk in this little room. He didn't question her. He just got on with making that desk. And as he was doing it, she went into town and bought the best art materials that she could afford. She set them out on that long table, and then she went through the village calling out, who wants to come to Máire Rua's house? Any children that want to come to Máire's house? And they went. She was like the Pied Piper of children, and they had great times in Máire's house. They learned to make art and to have conversations and to say there the things they couldn't say at home. Words like fart. And they made deep friendships. And those friendships turned into love. And as those children grew and began to love one another, the weddings came. And Máire Rua became the Seanmháthir Lia, became the grey-haired grandmother. And they would invite her to their weddings. And she would frame one of the pictures that they had made as children. And she would present it to them as if it was a precious gift, which it was. A memory that hung on the walls of those happy homes in that village. And the village learned that it takes a whole village to raise a child. And Máire learned you don't have to give birth to be a mother. Sinné Mushvéal, that is my story.
Delightful story. You know, a lot of the stories that come from folklore have to do with childless women or childless couples. And the solution is always that they get magically pregnant and then everything's fine. And I love that this is different. You know, that there's a journey there that is fulfilling, and it says, you know what, there's more, there's the whole village that we need. Thank you for that. That's a beautiful story.
Oh, you're welcome. And I suppose where it came from, because you know and I know, Jim, that storytelling is a living art, and that sometimes it's nice to catch the threads of a story in the wise way, in the old wise way. So that one was haunting me for a while, you know, that fox story. And I was thinking, what is trying to come through here? And I kept seeing foxes everywhere I went. And I was talking to women who were feeling grief in the corporate world that I had inhabited myself. And they were saying, it feels like we have to make a choice between career and children. And even when children came, they were handing those children over while they were sleeping and then getting them back at the end of the day. And the children were still sleeping and they were missing those early milestones, you know. And they were saying, oh my God, like, you know, to the outside world, it looks like we have everything. So that became a thread in the story, you know. And then I was talking to people, you know, kind of young women who felt that they had to get married and they had to fulfill their family's dreams and traditions of having children quickly, and they didn't feel ready. So that was another thread that came into the stories. And still, I spoke to men who said that they were finding it difficult to get pregnant with their partner, and that it was the front and center in everything in their lives that had become, kind of almost like an obsession, and they were thinking, could we fill that void with a child that has been born through somebody else? So that was yet another thread. So it was all those threads that are so valid in our modern world, real life griefs and joys and struggles and connections, And then we were talking about how long ago, when you had kids, that you had the other mums to rely on. Like, we were thinking, as children of the 80s, we could go into any house and say, what's in the pot? Can I join your table? And that doesn't really exist anymore. So there's lots of little threads that went into that story.
Well, and it reminds me also, my daughter is a postpartum doula. So she works with mothers and their children after birth. And all the stories that many modern women hear about, that's such a natural thing. It's just going to be wonderful. No pressure. And of course, that's not true. My daughter would remind them that all those notions of the ease of the early days of raising a child come from a time when there was a community. And, and that's why it wasn't easy, but it's far easier than a single person or even a couple trying to manage this all on their own.
And it's nice to have that topic spoken about, because also part of the feeling of inadequacy is, oh my God, everybody out there seems to be coping, but I can't cope in my situation.
Yeah.
So it's really nice to know, actually, you're going to be sleep deprived, It's isolated. Unless you have family around, it can be very isolating as well.
Absolutely.
We seem to divide things up in our society these days. Do you find that, Jim? Like by age, so like you have the young mums, and then they're missing the grannies.
It's even worse than that, in the sense that we really have, in so many parts of our modern world, lost that notion of community, of neighborhood, something that hopefully stories are a way to reknit that, to reweave that.
Sure. Yeah. Because you have every age in the story circle. And I love that. I love that about this work.
Yes.
That you've every age, you've every background.
Yes.
Everybody's welcome. There's
Everybody's
no borders.
Welcome.
There's no boundaries. Yeah, it's great.
Well, no big surprise. I heard your story and said, no, this is a story that needs to be told. And it's only inspired by, it's not exactly the same thing. This is a story about a young boy, actually, whose mother had died when he was very young, not unusual in those old days. And his father was really worried about how was he going to raise him on his own. And this father had some money, and he decided to send him to school, to a boarding school, to be raised there. And this is a Jewish story. So he was sent to a Jewish boarding school many years ago. And he grew up there and started to mature a little bit. And then when he was 10 years old, his father died. And so now here he is in this boarding school, all on his own. But they were very good to him, and they took care of him. And finally, he had his bar mitzvah, and he just stayed. He was a good student, and he stayed. And it was when he was 17 years old, on the evening of the anniversary of his father's death, he had a dream. And in his dream, his father came to him and said, you must go visit the Seer of Lublin. Now, the Seer of Lublin was a fellow just amazing who could see what was coming. This young man, we'll call him Yitzhak, woke up, and he thought that's a very strange dream. And he kind of forgot about it. And the next night he had another dream, and his father came back and he says, no, you have to go to the Seer of Lublin. You have to get there right away. And he woke up in the morning. Oh, now this is 2 nights, the same dream. And he thought, maybe I better think about this. The third night, his father came back, visit the Seer of Lublin, not just soon, right now. Go. So he went to the elders of the school and told them of his dreams. And they said, well, of course you've got to go. That's the word. And so he made his way to the seer's home, which was cities away. It took a long way to get there. So finally, one Friday afternoon, just before Shabbos is supposed to start, he arrives at the front door of the Seer of Lublin's house. He walks up to the door, and just before he knocks, the seer opens the door and says, you're late, but there's still time. Go to the mikveh. Now, one of the traditions in these Orthodox communities is that just before Shabbos, you immerse yourself in a ritual bath. And he, of course, was surprised that the seer was ready for him. And he said, well, where's there a mikveh? And the seer said, right around back, I've got my own. And so he headed away from the door and off to this little tiny shack that didn't look big enough to hold a full ritual bath. He opened the door and he looked down, and there were stairs down into darkness. He couldn't really see what was there, but clearly it was a mikveh. So he did what everybody does. You have to disrobe before you get in. And he starts taking off his clothes as he's going down, and it's just not seeming right. He's going down much further than he should be able to go, and still no mikveh. Finally, he's down to his seat. So he's just wearing this shirt that barely covers him, and his feet come to solid ground, not water. And he steps a little further out, and it starts to lighten a little bit. And he takes another step, and all of a sudden he sees he's on the banks of a river. And there's a huge tree in front of him and a little road around it. And he doesn't know what's going on. And he figures he's in the wrong place. He turns around to go back up the steps, and they've disappeared. So here he is standing almost naked in the middle of this forest, and he hears voices approaching. And he thinks, well, I'll ask them where I can go and what I can do. But as they get closer, he realizes these are angry men that are coming. These are men who are robbers, thieves, and he doesn't want to be seen by them. So what does he do? He climbs up the tree. And he hugs the trunk of the tree up as far as he can go. And sure enough, these men arrive on horseback, and they're a little drunk already, and they're crowing about the last person they killed, and he knows he's in danger, and he hopes they leave soon. But the tree is so inviting that they said, let's make camp here tonight. And so they put down all their gear, and they light a fire, and they hang a wineskin from one of the lower branches of the tree, and they're just having a party that night. And he thinks, well, I'll just wait here till the morning and they'll go away. And then he sees it. There's a snake. A big snake is slithering down the tree its fangs dripping poison. And now he doesn't know what to do. He can't go down, he can't go up. And the snake slithers right by him and off to that branch that held the wineskin. And it bites into the wineskin. And it starts to drink the wine. And when it bites, of course, the venom goes into the wineskin. And it doesn't take the snake long to get so drunk that it slithers off away and heads back down. Well, the men haven't seen the snake and they don't know what it's done. And they come and they get the wineskin because they run out of their other wine and they drink the wine. And, well, they weren't the best men in the world and they all die. That's, they drank the snake's poison. Well, finally, morning comes and he figures he can come down the tree safely. And sure enough, he does. And he decides he's not going to take anything from these people, but he's going to take some clothes. He's got to get dressed. So he takes some clothes and he's rummaging around in their bags. And in the bottom of one of the bags, he finds this jewel that is just glowing. And he knows it must be stolen. I mean, these folks wouldn't have the jewel of their own. So he takes it and he says, I'll return it. He heads off down the road in the direction they were going. The road gets a little wider. In the distance, he can see city walls. He comes to the city walls and he's stopped by the guards at the gate and questioned because he's dressed like, thieves. And he said, no, I'm not a thief. In fact, there were some thieves back there, and I took care of them. Well, the snake took care of them, but it's all okay. And they said, well, let us search your bag. And they find the glowing jewel. They said, oh, you're the one who stole it. He said, no, come back with me. I'll show you that they're there. So he takes them back, and sure enough, they realize that he didn't steal it, that he's trying to return it. And they say, this is the jewel that was going to be a gift to the princess upon her wedding. And it was stolen, and the king was so upset that he said, whoever finds it can marry my daughter. So they take him to her, and, good things start to happen, and they're married, and they start to have a family, and the years go by, and he's in love with this princess. I mean, it's a beautiful, beautiful family. He loves his children beyond measure. And finally, he's getting to be a little older, and he thinks, I wonder if the tree is still there. And so he takes a horse, and he and the horse go riding back up that road to look for the tree. And as he's getting closer to the tree, the river starts to rise, and it starts to flood. And it gets higher and higher, and the horse is swimming, and the horse gets too tired, and he jumps off the horse, and he's trying to stay afloat in this rising flood. And all of a sudden, his foot hits something solid. And he pushes up a little bit, and there's another thing, and he's walking up steps. And as he walks up the steps, his clothes fall off of him, and there he is in just his tzitzit. And he emerges from that tiny little mikveh, dripping wet, dries himself off as best he can, puts his clothes back on, and wonders if the Seer of Lublin still lives there because he's been there so long. He comes back to the front door, and again the seer opens the door, and he doesn't seem to have aged a day. And he says to the seer, what's going on? I can't, what? And the seer said, come in, I'll explain. And he walks into the house, and there, seated on the couch, is the seer's wife and the seer's daughter. And he looks at the seer's daughter, and he recognizes the wife that he had had. And the seer said, I knew that you were destined to become my son-in-law, but I had to make sure that you were a good person and that you would love your family. And so I see that you will. So please, come have dinner with us. And that's the story of the underground forest.
Oh my God, that's an epic journey, isn't it, Jim?
Isn't it?
Oh, I loved the drunken snake. You know,
It's especially fun to tell that to kids because they loved the drunken snake.
but there was so many sumptuous, beautiful images in that, you know, and then also visceral images that made you recoil a bit, like, you know, like when they were drinking the poison and they died. That was one where you're like, oh, you know, and then the jewel, and I could see it in my mind's eye. To me, it was blue. I'm not sure what color your jewel was, but I often ask people afterwards, what color was your jewel, or what did you see in your mind's eye, you know? So I saw many pictures and I absolutely loved that. And as he was going into the room and the seer's daughter was there, I knew. I knew. It was so satisfying.
Yes.
When you said that was the wife in his dream. It was like he lived his life twice, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Kind of knew what was coming. Yeah, you know.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be lovely? I'd love to have that power, you know.
Well, there's, you know, it's interesting because there are many stories. The Seer of Lublin was a real person. And there are many stories about him wrestling with his foreknowledge.
Yes.
Because he didn't want to deprive
it's lovely when
people.
it's bright and shiny, but it's hard when yeah.
But even if it's bright and shiny, if I tell you your future, have I just taken away your free will?
Yeah.
And that, so that he would wrestle with that a lot.
Or your chance to go another way, to go down another path.
Sure.
You know, for sure, you know. Oh, Jim, that was great, you know. So will we say goodbye for today?
I think it's a good time to say goodbye. We'll have our underground lives, and we'll see each other in a couple of weeks.
Meet you again on the Story Road. Will we say goodbye from Cork?
And goodbye from New York, but only for a while, because we'll be back again with another episode. Absolutely.
We can't wait to see you on the Story Road one more time. And from this time till that, be safe on the Story Road.